There's a few things that some feedback that come from the last videos that I've done over the last couple of days. I wasn't going to do one today, but there's been a lot of feedback on what I've done and some questions. So I got a bit frustrated because I wanted to answer some of these. First of all, let me say that supervision as really an expectation now, certainly in the UK, of practice of dealing with childcare. This come from the Monroe report that was commissioned by the Department of Education and come to light some years ago now. The Monroe, Eileen Monroe, the distinguished Eileen Monroe. This is a massive report on childcare in the UK. And one of the central recommendations, as I read it, was that people in the childcare professions should be taking structured, organised, focused supervision, not managerial supervision. And Monroe criticises the confusion between professional practice supervision and management, which is basically appraisal, and also the falling into counselling. Supervision isn't that. It isn't a form of therapy as such. It's a tool of management in that respect. So in response to Monroe, I wrote this little book some years ago. It's called Supervision, Praxis and Purpose, and it's developing critical model of practice for those working with children and young people post Monroe. I did it with Justin Hill, Tina Salter, and John Pieper. But there you are. So if you fancy getting your head around a bit more of what supervision is and what it does and how it fits into recommended policy, government-backed policy now. Unfortunately, you ask many youth workers about this and they know nothing of Monroe. You talk about Monroe and you often get a room full of blank looks, which is tragic because it covers all childcare. The other thing I wanted to come up is that people were saying to me they have chats. So something that's been, people talk to me about over many years. We don't do structured supervision. We have informal chats. This raises all sorts of questions. One is confidentiality. If people are overhearing you, if it's not in a designated space. That do we want as parents, and do we want parents to think we just chat about their children, you know, when it comes to mind, when we fancy it, when we feel like it, as long as we like or as short as we like. Also, you see, with chats, things fall into the realm of gossip. You can't help it. It's natural. It's not something. It's not, if it isn't controlled in a particular space over a particular time, chats turn into arguments, debates, all sorts of things, gossip. They're not structured or disciplined within a professional practice. And this is what Monroe and certainly what the YMCA College did for all the time that I was there, the 10 million years that I was there, is that we recommend it happens at a certain place over a certain time. Supervision is a certain thing, fits into a certain type of box. So chatting isn't supervision. Chatting is chatting. Supervision is supervision. Like supervision is in counselling. Counselling is supervision. It's not supervision. Counselling is counselling. And staff appraisal, management, what people mistakenly call management supervision, that's staff appraisal. Have you done this? When you're doing that, you should have done this, etc., etc. That's not what supervision is about. Supervision is a reflection on your practice, a review of you as a practitioner and the work that you're doing. Out of that comes this argument that there's a difference between having supervision with your manager and having a supervision with an external supervisor. If you look at this in law, certainly in British law, and I don't see why international law and other countries would depart from this very much, the supervisor as an ethical, moral professional, and sometimes legal, depending on how payment is made, responsibility to the organisation. So talking to your manager and thinking that somehow that your external supervisor is completely detached from your organisation is a fantasy. In UK, we have a duty of care towards young people. We have a duty of care towards young people that we work with legally, what they call the expectation of a duty of care that the child or the family will have of us. But also, you see, the supervisor has a duty of care towards the supervisee and to the organisation. That's how it works in law. So if there's something remiss that the supervisee discloses, and like, I'm not talking about, oops, I made a mistake with the tea money or something like that. If they reveal something that is of professional concern, the supervisor has a duty, an ethical, moral, sometimes legal, certainly professional duty, not just to keep it to themselves, but to let the people who need to know, and that's often the organisation. So this differential between the two is a bogus, flawed differential. Supervision is supervision. It's not non-managerial and managerial. Supervision is supervision. Again, if you fall into a staff appraisal or you fall into counselling, then that's something else. And that's the point of being a trained supervisor, an experienced supervisor. You just, it's like anything else. But you're not a therapist, which is what a counsellor is. And you have to have a particular, most counselling, certainly in Britain, the counsellors are expected to take specialist counselling supervision. So the stuff that kind of Smith and Jeff's talk about, getting into a counselling mode, doing a bit of counselling, is a bit like doing a bit of dentistry, really. You're not qualified, most of us are not qualified to do it. We don't know much about transference and counter-transference, for instance. And we don't get the appropriate supervision, and many of us don't have the appropriate training. So to just slip into a bit of counselling is something a bit iffy about it, to be quite honest. So it needs thinking about, at least, and perhaps in supervision it needs thinking about. So they're the things I really quickly wanted to cover. The bogus differential between management supervision and non-managerial supervision. It is a skill. Some managers do fall into that management slot, and that skill needs to be developed, of detachment from that role. But certainly it's not unusual in social services and in medicine for managers to undertake supervision. It's not unusual, it's not remiss. Most organisations can't afford external supervisors, so they use managers in-house. So that little get out of, I can't do management because you're my manager, it's a skill that's acquired by the manager, and it's a skill that's acquired by the supervisee. It's based on trust, but it's also based on having confidence in your competence. Because why would you not want to talk about your practice to your manager? Why would you be defensive in that way? But it needs talking about. It's not something that can be just dismissed just like that. But it is an avenue that people go down, and often to avoid supervision. And supervision is full of avoidance tactics. That's not saying anybody's bad, or supervisor's unskilled, or supervisee is being naughty. It's natural. It is what we do. We take time to concentrate and focus and find a way around any particular discipline, and it is a discipline. It happens over 1 hour, no more, no less. It happens in a designated place, a place that is convenient and appropriate to supervision. One last point, again, we can talk about this forever, but confidentiality and secrecy are two different things. People say we won't talk about anything. I won't let anything that comes in this room go out of this room. I won't tell anybody anything. That's secrecy. It has no place in professional practice. We don't have secrets. We do have confidentiality, and confidentiality is a very shorthand idea of confidentiality is the need to know. Now, we can't keep secrets, but we can be confidential. Going into supervision or counselling or even staff appraisal, there are boundaries to who can be told and what can be told. But that is a matter of professional judgment, which is a whole different kettle of fish that I'll probably talk about some other time. Lastly, what it is not to have supervision. How do I explain to a parent or a funder? We don't talk about the young people that we work with. We don't share one another's practice. We don't do that. We don't like it, we don't need it, we don't want it. We have no system or approach to talking about your child and what we do with them. We just do it. If you can imagine yourself as a parent or a guardian or even a funder, someone who's funding the work, I don't think you would be too impressed and say, oh, that's all right, that's really good, really, that you keep it all to yourself, that you don't talk about it, that nobody knows what's going on but you, and you don't review what you've done in any structured or formal or regular way. That isn't professional. That's unprofessional. That's not what professionals do. You know, if you're tossing burgers, even that, you know, folk, even that's not disparaging people who toss burgers, but even those that do these, that, you know, perhaps less involved jobs in terms of other people's psyche or other people's children. Even in those, in McDonald's, there's types of talking about the work we do and how it can be better. So that's what I wanted to cover, and got it off my chest. See you later.